Hi, this is Darren from Property Prosperity. I've got a special edition today to have a chat to you about. I thought I'd do a book review, and just so happens to be that I released my book today, so I thought that might be a good book to review. So it's called No Place Like Home, and it's the hassle-free guide to building your dream home. And like I said, I just released it today, and I'm super excited because I've actually found out that it's gone #1 in its category for business and investment books. So, which is pretty amazing. And I haven't let anyone know this yet, but it's actually I've just got a few minutes ago a message through from my publisher, and it went #1 in the US as well. So that's pretty amazing. So yeah, it's amazing. It's pretty cool because the fact is I've taken me years to get to this point essentially. So probably about 4 years ago I decided to write this book, so it's been that long in the making. Not so much that I've just been sitting there working on it for the last 4 years, but probably just the fact that I've just been doing so many things. I've had so many distractions in my life over the last 4 years, and I've just been collecting all the information and then slowly trying to edit it when I get some free time, and then putting it all together, and then finally getting it all written up, and then finally getting it published. So after 4 years, it's pretty amazing that yeah, I've had a really good response, and if you have bought my book, then I really appreciate it, and yeah, it's amazing that you're supporting me in this sort of way, and I'm sure you'll find it interesting. I'm sure you get a lot of use out of it, and if you haven't bought it, for another few hours till the end of tonight, so for another 4 or 5 hours, I have had it on special for the last 24 hours or less than 24 hours now, so you could buy it at 99 cents. So I'll put a link in the comments below, so you'll be able to click on that and buy it at 99 cents. After tonight, it'll go back to the full retail price. But yeah, even if you pay the full retail price, to be honest, if you're thinking about building a house and you don't have this information, it's going to cost you definitely tens of thousands, probably more as far as costs of your building goes, but also just the hassle factor associated with building when you don't get the information correctly up front, and then things go wrong. It can be a massively stressful process. So what I thought I'd do tonight is just go through some of the chapters, give people a bit of a heads up of what was in my book. Feel free to put any comments or any questions in there if there's something you'd like to know a little bit more about building. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. And yeah, hopefully just make it as interactive as possible. And if you've liked what I had to say, or if you've read my book, then click on the like button. If you haven't read my book, still click on the like button anyway, because I really appreciate it. And if you know someone's thinking about building, click on the share button, because then they'll be able to check out this video, and hopefully they get some useful information, and also they'll be able to get access to my free book, or to the 99-cent book as well, so they're relatively free, I suppose. Even if, like I said, even if they pay full price, it's still going to be a bargain for the hassle it's going to save them down the long term. So the first question chapter I focused on was why you should build in the first place. So I looked at some of the tax benefits if you're looking for investment, depreciation and negative gearing and all those other sort of things people talk about. But then I also looked at the fact that you're getting a brand new house, so you're basically getting what you want. So for a lot of people, that's the issue with an older house, an existing house. At the end of the day, it's never going to be your house, and it's never going to be what you really want. So a lot of the clients that I help build is not necessarily that they want to build a house; it's just they can't find anything that's their home, that's what they want to be. So they end up just having to build because there's no other option for them. So I go through some of the benefits of building in chapter 1. Then once we've decided building is for us, then we look at what type of house to build, things to consider. I suppose at the end of the day, it's all about compromise. There's probably 3 things. It's about what you want and what council are going to let you do, and then finally what you're going to afford to do. So you sort of compromise between those 3 things, and I go through that in a little bit more detail. So it helps you make a decision on what house is going to be best for you. Then I go through some of the economics of property. It's all about supply and demand, and so trying to work out, where you should buy and what you should buy, and supply and demand to work out what's likely to go up in price over time, particularly if you're looking at for investment. I mean, even if you're not really, you don't want to buy in an area where it's going to go down over time, because it's obviously not a good thing to lose money on a property. Then I go through some of the, when we're building for investment, what's some of the things we think about when we're actually designing the house or picking a location. And it will be, if you're building for investment, building for your own home, it's a different process and a different thought process you'll go through, and the end result will be different as well. So it's good to think in a different way when you're looking for investment. Then I talk specifically about finance for building, and it is different than if you're buying an existing house. So there is some similarities, but there's some things that are slightly different. There's different lenders that do certain what's called construction finance, and basically what it means is they just give you the money when you need it. So initially you're buying a block of land, so they'll give you money for that. Then as the house is getting built, you pay for it as the house is getting built. So they're called progress payments, and you just pay for it as you go, basically. At the end of the day, when the house is all finished, you still have the same total amount of loan as if you bought an existing house. It just means you're just paying for the house as it's getting built along the way. So I talk about some of the pros and cons of that. Then I talk about, if we've decided buildings for us, we worked out our finance situation, well, where do we buy? What's the best location? So we'll have a bit of a chat about that. And then once we've decided where we're going to buy, then I talk about some of the things you need to think about when you're selecting the right block. So it is very, very important the block you build on. That's going to have a big effect on your building process and obviously the cost of building as well. If you've got retaining walls or easements or trees or a whole pile of things are going to affect the build. I suppose a lot of people just assume they can just pick out the house they want and then just plonk it on any block of land. That's definitely not the case. And if you do that option, then it's going to be really, really expensive for you. Really what you should be doing is designing the house to fit the block, and it's going to save you a lot of money, but also using the block as efficiently as possible. At the end of the day, the land costs a lot of money, so you want to use it as well as you possibly can, so make the house fit on the block. So then I talk about land contracts. So if we're buying a block of land, we're going to be signing a land contract with a real estate agent. So I go through some of the things you need to consider as you're going through that process, and some of the pitfalls. Then after that, we go through the economics of building. This is specifically talking about what it's like to be a builder. The good things and the bad things, and some of the financial consequences and the risks that builders take on. You need to think about it from the builder's perspective, because if it goes wrong for the builder, it's probably going to go wrong for you too. So you really want your builder to be in control financially, in a stable cash flow situation, so they're not going to run out of cash and you end up with some troubles along the way, I suppose. So then I look at building regulations. There is a whole pile of rules and regulations, particularly that apply to the builder on how they construct the home, and obligations, legal but also ethical obligations as well. And so there's state government legislation, federal government legislation. There's a whole pile of legal precedents that's applied to builders, which they need to take into account when they're building your home. This, again, you might not care about this, but then if things go wrong, you will need to make sure they've done things as per required legally wise. So it's just good to have a basic understanding of what the law is and how it applies to builders. Then we go through a little bit about council requirements. So, if we're building a house on there, we've got to make sure we fit within the council requirements. So I talk about, setbacks and, think of private open space, the backyard, what's it called, site coverage, so the house relative to the size of the block, the overshadowing issues, and, a whole pile of different things. So I go through all that sort of stuff. Then I talk about some hidden costs. If you've talked to anyone that's built before, you might have heard them talk about how that there was massive cost blowouts and time delays and all these other stress. So I go through some of those things that you need to look out for, just to make sure you don't get any surprises along the way. So, because that can be massively stressful. If you run out of cash halfway through building, you're stuffed. Basically, you can't live in it, you can't rent it out, you can't sell it. There's not much else you can do really. So it's going to create a huge amount of problem for you. So then after that, we talk about finding a builder. What's the best way to find a builder? How do we choose between different builders? Which is the best builder for you? And they're not all the same. There is pros and cons with different builders, and how do you work that out if you're going through that process? So again, I think that's really useful. I've got the next chapter is actually questions you need to ask a builder, and I've got quite a few questions in there. The thing I point out in the chapter is not necessarily what they answer. So what the answer to the questions are is probably more about how they answer the question. They don't necessarily have to have a good answer to every question, but it's about how they respond to the questions and how open they are, and how open and honest they are with the dealings with you. Because again, you're really trying to judge, at the end of the day, it's all about a gut feel, trying to work out whether that builder's going to look after you. And some of these questions will reveal some of that, thoughts and feelings about the particular builder, and help you make a decision on which builder is going to be right for you. Then we talk about the quote. So when you've decided on a builder, or you're shopping around between builders and you're getting quotes back from builders, I talk about what's included in the quotes, things you need to think about, things you need to clarify when you're getting quotes back from builders. It makes it a lot easier trying to choose between builders. And then I look at, I'm looking at the next chapter is about quality versus price. At the end of the day, I see a lot of slogans from builders saying the best quality at the lowest price. You can't have the best quality in the lowest price. You can't say a house is going to cost $1 million and a house that costs $150,000 is the same, and that builder just happens to be doing a bargain basement price for you, it's just not possible at the end of the day. So there's always going to be a compromise between quality and price. What you need to do is find that right compromise for you, that you're going to feel comfortable that you get a house that you're happy with, but it fits within your budget. And it's all about compromise, and you just have to make sure that you're going to be happy with the end result. So you've got to be really honest up front and clear that you can't have everything. So what are you willing to do without, I suppose. Then I actually talk about a few scenarios where I've helped some clients out where builders actually gone bankrupt, and I'm helping them through that process and helping them find another builder. And that can be a really stressful process, so it's really important to get the right advice and to sort of plan for it. If you can feel, how do you decide? How do you discover whether your builder is about to go bankrupt? So I give some tips on things you need to look out for when you're talking to your builder, things you need to try and look out for when you're talking, just to get a gut feel of is my builder going to be around by the time I get to the end of the house? Because you need to get to the end with a half-finished house that's with a builder that's gone bankrupt. It's just not a good experience for anybody, basically. So then we talk about builder brokers. Again, a lot of people haven't really heard what a builder broker is. Builder brokers help people shop between builders and trying to get them the best deal. Very similar to the way a mortgage broker works. Just trying to give you options, you can leverage off their experience to try and help you negotiate with the builders, but also give you all the information up front. Quite often, builders have the incentive to give you the lowest price, and then they quite often leave out a whole pile of things to give you the lowest price. Someone that's a lot more experienced, they're less likely to get that situation. They're more likely to give you realistic information up front, so you really know what it's going to cost. The way a builder broker works, they get a commission from the builder, just like a mortgage broker gets commission from the bank. Their commission is not added onto the price. It's basically the same as if you go direct to the builder. They're like an independent sales guy. So as far as the builder is concerned, they just pay the builder broker the same price they would have paid, the same commission they would have given their sales guy. So the builder's happy, they get work they otherwise wouldn't get. The client's happy because they get sort of an independent viewpoint. And so it works out good for everyone, I suppose, except for the sales guy who misses out on the build. But everyone else is pretty happy. So then I talk about designing a house. Once you've designed it, just talk to your builder and decide on your builder. Then how do we design our house and what's the best way to make it suit us and make sure we don't have any things we're disappointed about down the track. Then we talk about something called a preliminary works agreement. So that's the agreement you sign with a builder once they've given you a quote and you decide to go ahead with them. We talk about building contracts. That's the next stage. You're going to be signing a building contract with a builder. So what that involves and the legal consequences of all that and things you need to consider when signing the building contract. Payment terms. I talked to you a little bit before about finance, how it's a construction loan and you're paying in progress payments, which means you're paying as the house is getting built. So this chapter I talk about those payment terms in a little bit more detail. Then I talk about warranties, so building warranties, so what actually that covers you for and what it doesn't cover you for, and what you could expect from your builder if you have issues along the way. And something called building indemnity insurance. So this is if the builder goes broke or dies or just disappears along the way. So this is something to try and cover you if that happens, and then what the responsibilities are of the builder and what the responsibilities are of the insurance company and what are your responsibilities if that happens. So then I look at contract variations. A lot of people complain about builders. They've signed up a building contract and then suddenly there's all these cost blowouts. They keep adding. They're called contract variations where they're adding to the contract. I explain to you when they can do that and when they can't do that and what documentation needs to be signed to allow you to have variations along the way. And then I just have a bit of a chat about the construction process, things you need to look out for, what happens at each stage of the build. The slab goes down and the frame goes up and the brickwork goes up and the roof goes on and the what they call first fix and second fix, and then which is all the cabinetry type of things. So there's a whole pile of different things that goes along the way. So I explain on that in this chapter, so you can have a really clear idea of what happens during the construction process. And then second to last, I actually talk about disputes. So what happens if things go wrong and we end up arguing with our builder? Obviously, you do have a contract with him and you can go back to him and say, hey, we haven't done it as per our agreement. But then what's the next stage if he says, too bad? How do we resolve that? What's the steps? And there is quite a few steps, and I would advise you, definitely the first thing is not to just ring up a lawyer and start going to court and suing people. There is a lot of other things you can do besides just going to court and suing people. At the end of the day, in my experience, no one really wins if you go to court. The only one that's going to win is the lawyers. So my advice to you is that would be definitely the last resort, and look at all other options before that. And this chapter really gives you a clear understanding of what those other options are and how to try and resolve the issues as easily and efficiently as possible, and then you can just move into your house and don't have this hassle of dragging on for years and years and years, because obviously, like I said, the only one that's going to win out of that is the lawyers, who are going to make plenty of money out of you, and you're probably going to be worse off, to be honest. So, and then finally, the last stage of building is what they call practical completion and handover. Practical completion is when the house is practically complete, so as per what it sounds. So it's not that it's totally finished, it's pretty much finished though. There's a few little things they need to finish off, so they get you in here to come have a look at the house, just to make sure there's no other little issues you need to, because this is when the tradies are still on site. So the reason they like to get you in there before it's finished is because if there's things that need to be fixed, they can just get the tradies fixing it while they're there. The danger if they leave it to what's called handover, when the house is totally finished, all the tradies are gone, they've moved on, they're working on their next job then. So it's quite difficult to get them back once they've already moved on to the next job. So it's better to try and resolve as many issues as possible prior to handover, which is at the practical completion stage. And then when you get to handover, hopefully all those issues have been resolved. Then you just pay the final payment, they give you the keys, you move into your house, and then you're all pretty happy, I suppose. So they do have a situation after that where you actually have a 3-month sort of warranty period for just small little issues. At the end of the day, you get in there, you have a good look around the house, you're not really going to have enough time to focus on if there's any other little issues along the way. So they give you a 3-month period where you can actually move into the house, live there for a while, and you'll start to notice little things as you're living there that you might not have noticed as you just had your final walkthrough of the house. So hopefully that's made sense. Hopefully you've motivated you to go out there and grab my book if you haven't already got it already. I'm sure, I don't know, if I was looking at building, I know from many years of building that, if I had this information before I started building lots of houses, I would have saved myself, well, for me, because I built so many houses, I would have saved myself hundreds of thousands of dollars with the issues I had. Also, not just with the issues, but even, I would have designed my houses or done things slightly differently, which meant that when I go to sell my houses, I would have made a lot more money as well, and that's definitely would translate to huge amounts of money in my pocket. So obviously, great, get on there and grab my book for 99 cents. If you don't grab it at 99 cents, then even at the full price, it's still a bargain, I think, and it's going to save you a lot of money. So hopefully you've liked what I had to say. If you haven't liked it, still click on the like button, because I really appreciate it. And if you know someone's thinking about building, click on the share button. They'll get a bit more information about my building book, and they can get on there and have a look. And if you've got any comments, put in the comments box below, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Bye for now.